So Linda, after you do the little spiel about PAEA and Region 1 and the counties that are in Region 1, do you also want to mention that participants should change their name to whatever they registered with so that Jill can more easily take attendance?
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Laura Westmoreland, if we could admit her and make her a co-host.
And then I'm just going to hold everybody else in the waiting room that is a participant until we get a little closer to time.
That sounds good.
Hello.
Hi, Laura.
Hey. So I'm a tad bit dark here, but when I do my hands, that should have plenty of light.
Oh, nice.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a lesson plan that you guys have for this that we can share with our participants?
Do we have a lesson plan, Laura? Not in the official sense, I don't think.
For the alcoholing or for the markers and tiles?
Yes. Mhm.
I could share something with you if you'd like, but no, I don't have anything written up to do this with students.
Okay.
But we could make something if that's helpful.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And then we can just email it out. If you send it to us, we can email it out to all the participants. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, I'll work on that with you, Laura.
Okay,
I'll take
sounds
over
good.
doing that. How many are signed up this evening? Do you know?
I don't have a final count. Leah might have the final count, but we have, Leah, do you remember exactly how many people we have for tonight?
26.
26.
Oh,
I mean, that's including Linda and myself.
nice.
Yeah, we have a good group of people.
Perfect.
That's good for fitting on the screen.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm just finishing up my dinner. I will unmute and re-video.
Oh, that's okay. You're fine. You're fine.
Oh, and I need to change my name.
Miss Lisa. I will be right back.
Lisa, do you guys also need Act 48 credits?
No.
Okay. How's your weather out there?
Not bad. We had a freak snowstorm on Monday.
Mhm.
where it snowed the biggest snowflakes I've ever seen, as fast as I've ever seen snow come down, but it didn't really stick or do anything. It just kind of looked neat. And then maybe that, I forgot what day that was. Maybe it was Sunday, but whatever. Now it's been so warm out that there's no snow. So
Oh, so we're pretty
been-
cold here. We got snow started last night into the morning. Our schools were either closed and remote or like Leah, who had a real snow day. We worked remotely.
and where are you
We
located?
will never have another snow day. I'm Pittsburgh, south of Pittsburgh.
South of Pittsburgh. Okay. We were really excited that they gave our students, my husband's a teacher, so they gave the students around here a real snow day like 2 weeks ago or a week ago.
Well, that's what Leah had today, and she had last week. We've been remote. We will never have a snow day again in our.
Yeah,
we will be remote all the time.
This was nice. The messaging was like, the kids deserve a day. It's going to be 2 days of snow. So Tuesday, you're virtual. You don't get 2 snow days, but Monday we'll give you the one and enjoy it and be a kid.
No, I'm looking forward to that, but I don't think that's going to happen.
We'll never get snow days again. Is just now that they learned that we can work remotely.
Exactly.
The museum was closed, but that messaging that came out was like, the museum might be closed, but if you can work from home, you're working from home. It's like, bummer.
Yeah.
I think we're supposed to get a little more snow later this week. I wonder if it might be any part of what you're getting.
Yeah.
now.
Well, we're going to be getting more.
Mm.
I think we're supposed to be on and off all week.
Guess it's the season where it can come every few days.
Yeah. That is true.
Laura, does it matter that I only have 2 colors of Sharpies?
I don't think so. You know, I mean, you'd have more choices if you had more, but this will at least give you an idea of what you can do.
Okay.
And then you can pick up more as you'd like. What 2 colors do you have?
Black and blue.
Okay. You'll have smoky looking tiles.
I raided my cabinet at work last week.
I'm gonna go grab that stuff. I'll be right back.
Now, does it have to be a Sharpie or could it be like can it be any permanent marker?
It would just need to be, you know, I'm not sure that Sharpies are exactly alcohol based. I know Copic markers work. Let's see, nothing on it that really says what's in it. I guess if you had a different brand and you just weren't sure, you could, you know, test it on something else like piece of plastic or just see if the alcohol will dissolve it. That's what it comes down to.
Mhm. Okay, but we'll work with Sharpies though.
Yeah, definitely with Sharpies.
Yeah, because we had Sharpies and we have, I bought the Sharpies and we also have the big markets ones. So I brought those home too.
Is
Consider
that just a
permanent.
different, like an
Just a
off
different
brand?
brand. It's made by Big, like Big Pen.
Oh, Bic. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
you would just want to try that. My guess is it probably would work. But the Copic markers you can buy that are for like the blending, those
Yeah,
current
they're
markers,
just too
those work.
expensive.
They are very expensive. But if you have them, they work. You can get them in all kinds of shades.
So we will be recording this because we record all of our sessions to put on online so people can come back and look at things if that's okay. Hopefully that's okay with you guys.
Okay, not a problem.
With me.
So we have about 7 that are here already, so that's good, in the waiting room. Just went on, saw that. You know, people sign up, sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. You just never know.
Yeah, I did a PAEA book club last year and learned that.
Yeah, I was doing it for a while, and then I seem to be getting these meetings all the time. It seems like I think I can go, and then a meeting pops up, and then you can't. Leah, do you want me to submit the people that are in the waiting room at this point? We have 7 people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Leah and Linda.
Hi, Leslie. Glad you got here tonight.
Yeah,
Not too much traffic, I hope.
Not too much, not too much. I'll be here in the background listening and peeking because I want to steal some ideas, but I'm knee deep in grading, so.
Sure, no problem. Sorry about that.
Do that first?
Yeah, clean them all,
Oh,
make sure they're clean.
make sure they're clean.
Yep. Dry already.
Okay.
So we'll just wait another maybe 2 or 3 minutes. We did have 26 people sign up, and right now we're at 19. Oh, now we're at 20.
20,
So we'll just give
21.
a couple extra minutes. Did anybody else have a snow day today, or just me?
Lucky you.
You're the lucky one.
It's great.
Yes,
I'm really jealous. That's 2 you've had already.
Yeah.
1 week.
How do you have snow days? We're all virtual. We don't have snow
yeah.
days. It's just constant virtual.
Well, we're half and half in the building and half virtual with our kids, but snow days are all now virtual
Oh, okay.
for everybody.
I'm coming too from Miami, so there are no snow days.
flood maybe.
Did you read about the event on the NAEA page?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, whenever Jill sends the email out for Act 48 credit, that's the Pennsylvania professional development, just respond to that and ask her for a certificate of participation instead.
Okay.
If you need the credits, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know I get credits for that.
Yeah, you can if you need them.
Mhm.
Okay. So does the email come to me after I finish this? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
Yeah, these virtual events are cool in that we get to meet new people that we wouldn't normally if it was just in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So is my camera on? This is Cindy McCusker.
Not that I see, no.
Cindy
They're
McCusker
actually,
on. I don't know how to turn it on.
let me see you on the participants list. I'm going to click the button that says ask to start video. Is anything happening to you?
It says start my video.
There you
There
are.
we go.
You go.
Hello, everybody. I was wondering, I couldn't find anything to, oops, let's see. Okay.
Linda, what do you think? Do you think we should get started to be respectful of the time of those who were here on time?
Yeah, I think so. It doesn't look like anybody else is coming on right now. And
Okay.
if they can just join us, they come on in. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Linda Abraham Braff. I am the co-rep for Region 1 with Leah Shuck, who will be speaking shortly. We are very fortunate to having this program this evening with the Brandywine Museum out in Chatsford, Pennsylvania. So thank you for being with us. So our region, Region 1, is a fairly large region. We have several different counties within the Pennsylvania area, Western Pennsylvania area that we service. And that's Fayette County, Washington County, Westmoreland County, Allegheny, and Greene counties. It's a pretty wide spread of people. Our session is being recorded this evening, so we just wanted to let you know. We also sometimes take screenshots. So if that is an issue, please shut off your video. And also during the initial part of the presentation, please mute yourself, especially if there's anything else that's going on in your homes. Additionally, if your name that is up is not the name that you registered with, please change that in order for you to be eligible for your Act 48 credits. We will be taking roll, and that is how the emails will be sent out. So make sure that the name is exactly how you registered.
What about the email? What if the email's different? I noticed my work emails on my screen right now, but I used my personal email to register.
What was the name that you used to register?
Cynthia McCusker.
Yeah, just put that on your screen.
Okay.
And that would be fine. And if you are from out of Pennsylvania, out of state, when the Act 48 credits come through, when you get your email, just send back a note to Jill saying that you're from out of state and you need just a certificate of participation so you can also get your credits for your particular state. So again, thank you for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Leah now.
Thanks, Linda.
You're
so
welcome.
just to tell you a little bit about the Brandywine River Museum of Art, for anybody who might be unfamiliar, I am one of those people. So I'm really excited to see some of the collection. So Brandywine is renowned for its holdings of the Wyeth family of artists. The museum features galleries dedicated to the work of N.C. Wyeth, Andrew Wyeth, and Jamie Wyeth. The museum's outstanding heritage collection is a cross-section of American art with a special focus on artistic practice in the Brandywine Valley. 19th and 20th century landscape paintings testify to the beauty which drew well-known artists to the area. Important portraits, still life paintings, and notable holdings in the American illustration add diversity and breadth to this unique collection. And as Linda mentioned, Brandywine is located in Chatsford, PA, which is on the other side of the state where we are. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Liesl and Laura, who are our featured Brandywine experts. So go ahead and take it away, ladies.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. My name is Liesl Mahoney, and I'm going to take over the first part of this evening. So I'm the Associate Educator for School and Family Programming at Brandywine. So I do school tours, I do kids programs, I do a read aloud every week, which is what this fancy background in my dining room is. And just for background's sake, I am certified K through 12 as an art teacher. Did my student teaching and realized that it was not for me. So I give you all the credit in the world for being art teachers and being teachers out in the field, because I did it for the 12 weeks and was like, whoa, I'm exhausted. And that was a lot of work. And I don't think this is for me. So I found my little niche and I just fell in love with working in museums, but still wanted to be a teacher at some capacity. And that's how I found education in the museums. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Brandywine River Museum of Art, we do have virtual tours for students of all ages that are available. So they are free. They're thematic and they are pre-recorded and captioned. So really easy to show on one device, on multiple devices, whatever you need to do that's best for you. We talked to a bunch of teachers in our area who said that that would be best for them. And then we can always add on live Zoom or live Schoology or live whatever it is that your school uses sessions to go with it. So a lot of times my teachers will do the pre-recorded captioned video and then have me come on for a Q&A and show a couple extra works and do like visual thinking strategies with 1 or 2 paintings. So just an option if anyone's interested, and that is all free at this point in time because we don't want you paying during this crazy COVID era. So this evening we are talking color. So our art activity later with Laura is going to be about color, and our kind of informal lecture tonight is about color. And my idea was, oh, color will be so bright and so fun in the middle of winter when it's so dreary. This will be great. And then I sat down to do a program on color, and I made my initial slideshow, and it went like this. This one's colorful. This one's colorful. It was awful. It was so awful. So after realizing that talking about color was really difficult with adults, I came up with what I hope is a more dynamic presentation for you instead of just showing you 10 artworks or 50 artworks of color. So I'm going to share my screen at this point, and I will show you what I have come up with. And we are going to take a little journey through the Brandywine River Museum of Art together. So we're going to start with the idea of color theory. And I'm doing this presentation later for volunteers and members of the museum. And so I added this slide in more for their sake than any of yours, because I'm sure you all know primary, secondary, tertiary colors, but it becomes really important for this first part of our talk. So we're going to start with this work by George Cope, which is Oranges. And he was born in Westchester and lived in Chester County, Pennsylvania for most of his life, which is right around the Brandywine River Museum of Art. And this is his trompe-l'oeil painting. So trompe-l'oeil is the French idea of doing paintings that fool your eye or trick your eye. So especially when you see this in person, it does catch you off guard for a second, where it looks like these real hanging oranges against a wood wall. But if we look closely, it's almost like this neat study of the color orange, or a neat study of the color green, where he really gets in there and does so many different shades and so many different values of that color, and really deeply explores the orange of the oranges. And I just think that they are absolutely beautiful. And then this is John F. Francis. This is his basket of cherries. Now, John F. Francis, you may recognize that name because he received a lot of recognition for portrait work. He did full-length portraits of both George Washington and William Penn, which are in the Pennsylvania State House. And that's what he was really renowned for. But then he ended up becoming this still life painter and really made it like Vogue and made it cool again. Like still life was kind of coming out of popularity, and he brought it back. So this is his study of a basket of cherries. And again, really getting in there and really studying all the nuances of the color red within this basket of cherries. And I just love that little glisten on each individual little cherry. This is Lily Martin Spencer. This is her raspberries. So again, a study of red, but I need to stop and tell you a little bit about Lily Martin Spencer because she is awesome. So you can see the date that she did this work is like 1858, 1859. And she had 13 children, which is bonkers to me, who has none, but she had 13. But what is so cool about Lily Martin Spencer is that her husband stayed home with the kids and took care of them, while she got to do the artwork and became the breadwinner for the family. So she learned right away that if she did works of art that were more appealing to the masses, she could then have them reproduced as these inexpensive prints and sell them to like the average Joe. And that's how she made a living. So this was virtually unheard of at the time. But here she was making a living as an artist, as a woman, in a time that just was not done, while her 13 kids were at home with the father. So I just think that like Lily Martin Spencer is the coolest chick ever.
Mhm.
NC Wyeth, as we heard earlier, we have a renowned collection of the Wyeth family of art, and there's a bunch of them. So their names are going to come up a lot tonight, but kind of the godfather of it all is NC Wyeth, who's mostly known for his illustrations of books like Treasure Island and King Arthur and these big epic adventure tomes. During this time, it was that time where illustration was illustration and fine art was fine art, and you were one or the other. You were a fine artist or an illustrator. And if you were an illustrator, you weren't thought of as a fine artist. And this always weighed on NC really heavily, and it always really bothered him. So he tried for basically his whole life to become an artist in that fine art sense. But he needed to always be doing his illustration because that's truly how he made his money. That's how he became a household name. It's what had him be able to buy his house and have his kids. But on the side, he was always trying and experimenting with being a fine artist. So in this work, I chose it just for that bright, brilliant backdrops of the tealish blues and the purples and that red geranium. But we're going to look mostly at that citrus fruit and just how wonderfully yellow and popping and gorgeous they are on that white cloth. I just think that they're absolutely exquisite. In comparison, we have this work by Walter Murch. And his style of painting objects is almost as though you're seeing them through like frosted glass. So it's almost like there's a frosted glass window here, and we're looking in on his lemons and potato. His lemons are this duller color. They're not the bright vibrancy of the ones that we saw before. And if we put them next to each other, you can really see that comparison of the two lemons and just the difference of the cloth they're on. NC chose that bright white. Walter Murch chose that more like dull brownish, almost like dirty. I wouldn't want my lemon sitting on that type cloth. But it really makes this neat comparison of a still life with two similar fruits, but how different they can look. So Howard Pyle was an illustrator and an author of children's books, and he started a school of art in Wilmington, Delaware, and had many students come to this school who we are going to hear about tonight, and one of them being NC Wyeth. So Howard Pyle was this phenomenal teacher for art and especially of illustration. And in this section, we're going to just briefly look at works that really focus on that idea of the opposite colors on the color wheel. So this being that red and that green opposite colors. So in the background, you can see all the greens, the table, the shutter, that long wooden beam holding up the pavilion maybe that she's standing under. There's even bits of green in the lighting in the background and in the that arch that has the brick. And then she just stands out so marvelously in the front with that beautiful red dress. So it's so neat that how they complement each other, even though they're these opposite colors. Frank E. Schoonover, also a student of Howard Pyle. He did this illustration, and this truly is an example of the blue versus the orange. I mean, even the horses are blue and orange. The outfits of the people are blue and orange. The foliage is blue and orange. So it really shows that these mostly men that we're going to look at right now who studied color theory would have learned how dynamic it would make their works of art by really using these opposite colors from the color wheel in their works of art. And this one is just so dynamic with the poses that's going on and really full of movement, which was a huge thing that was taught in the Howard Pyle School. This is back to NC Wyeth. This is a portrait of one of his daughters, Henriette. And Henriette ended up being an artist in her own right. And what's really neat with this work of art is it shows her at age 15 with the two loves of her life, which is the book that she's holding in her hand. She loved reading. And her background is these painted florals because she loved painting flowers. So she is really known for her painted floral pieces. And this again is that great blue versus orange. So you got the blue in the background, the blue of her pants, the blue of the book, and then just the orange of her shirt, the orange of her hair, the orange even in her cheeks and her lips, just make everything pop. And this was shown at the Wilmington Society of Fine Art in April 1924. And local press commented on the haunting color background of the portrait. And it really is beautiful. So this was just kind of done for NC Wyeth, but it ended up being actually used somewhere. It was used on the cover of the Ladies' Home Journal in November 1924. So that's pretty neat. This one we're just going to look at real quickly. I just thought it was fun because I've never seen this hanging up in the museum. This is another NC Wyeth that really shows off the blues and the oranges, where everything basically falls in one of those two colors, except for the bright bits of white that we see. So NC Wyeth is the grandfather. He has 5 children. Of his 5 children, one of them is Andrew. Andrew's son is Jamie Wyeth. So hopefully that confused you enough. I'm sorry. I should almost have a visual in here of all the family members. So this is the grandson to NC. This is Jamie Wyeth's curtain call. So Jamie Wyeth became fascinated with this dancer, Nureyev, and just would go to his performances and would do sketchings and drawings and paintings. And he measured every bit of this gentleman with calipers, so that he could know the exact size of his thighs, his arms, his muscles, every bit of him. We do have a full-length nude, so he did do every bit of Nureyev, so we know all his dimensions. This one I love because it's so dark, and then you just have that pop of the yellow and the purple opposite colors that just draw you right to Nureyev. And this was done years after Nureyev had passed away. And I love that it's called Curtain Call, and it's kind of like his last bow with this shadow behind him and the dark foreboding darkness all around him. But one child actually pointed out that it almost looks like he has wings. Those purple and gold almost look like wings coming off of him. So maybe he's an angel now, is what a child had said on a tour. You just have to love going on tours with kids because they will point out the most amazing thing to you. Something else to note with this work is if you look closely at it, it is done on cardboard. So if you look to the left-hand side, you can see it pretty well, like right in there, that this is done on like corrugated cardboard. So who knows how long a work like this will last by being done in that type of way. But for now, they're just extraordinary, these different works that he did in this manner. This one I think is so neat. This is Henry J. Solon's, and it's untitled, but its other name is World War I Scene. And it kind of takes you a moment to see that there is a World War I scene. When you first look at it, you visually just kind of get almost accosted by the colors, the blues, the purples, versus the yellow and the oranges just come right at you. And then if you give it a second though and look at it, there's a tank, there's smoke, there's people, there's guns, there's wagons, there's helmets. There's so much going on in this work, but it's just incredible that at that first glance, what you get is color, pure just color. And I just think that that work is extraordinary. He was also an illustrator who studied at the Brandywine School with Howard Pyle. So along with most of the other people we've spoken of tonight, he studied at that school. Something interesting with Henry J. Solon is a lot of illustrators still at this time were doing black and white illustrations because they knew that that's how their work was going to be printed. So why waste the time? Why waste the money on these paints of color when they're just going to be printed in black and white? And he was someone that really used just vivid, bright, vibrant colors, no matter what he was illustrating. Even if it was going to get turned black and white, he was all about the colors. So our next section is on color and shadow. And here we're going to really look at just, I love this section because it's just really looking at these beautiful landscapes that I wanted to be able to fit in, and just these lovely shadows that come from it. So NC Wyeth, as I said, really wanted to be known as a fine artist. So he tried a lot of different techniques. So this was his like impressionism phase that he went through. So we have a few paintings that are kind of in this style because he just kept trying new things and seeing what he could throw out there to the world and hope that something stuck. And again, just kept getting annoyed that what stuck were his glorious illustrations, which I find better than his fine artwork, but that's another story for another time. So this is Late Spring Morning. And I love that this kind of gives you that feeling that you're surrounded by trees without showing the trees that are next to you or behind you, because all you're getting are those just great green shadows across the ground, letting you know that there's just trees all around you. And NC Wyeth really believed in painting things that you know and staying close to home. He basically went to Chadds Ford and to Maine, and they're really the only places he went. And we're going to find that that's a reoccurring theme with most of the Wyeths, is Chadds Ford and Maine are their two locations. So this is just a local farm in Chadds Ford, and it looks pretty similar to this when I drive to work in the mornings, that there's horses, there's goat farms, there's these neat little fences running through, and this is truly what it looks like on my commute in the back roads of Chadds Ford. This is Carolyn Wyeth, which has a similar feel with the fence. This is one of his daughters. So of his 5 children, 3 became fine artists. So 3 became artists, 1 became a musician, and 1 became a like engineer and was completely brilliant. And the patent for the 2-liter soda bottle is attributed to that son. But Carolyn was an artist. She is possibly one of my favorite Wyeth artists. I just love her style. Her work is really fun to me. This one I chose, again, for the colors of just that brilliant shadow of that tree, just those different lovely greens in the ground. And I like the little hint of blue on that one rock in the bottom left-hand corner. She believed wholeheartedly in painting only what you know and painting only the surrounding area around her as well. So this again would have just been a scene in Chadds Ford. Peter Hurd married Henriette Wyeth. So the little girl that we saw when she was 15 in the orange shirt with her book, she ended up marrying Peter Hurd. And he introduced NC Wyeth and Andrew Wyeth to egg tempera, which we're going to see later on, an example of egg tempera. This, however, is an oil painting by Peter Hurd. And I just had to insert this one because of just the vibrancy of all the colors. But if we look at these shadows, we just looked at 2 that were very much green shadows on green grass. And these shadows have reds and blues and purples and browns and greens and oranges. And they kind of have a little bit of every color, which I just thought was wonderful. There's little dots of purple near the water and a little dot of purple that looks like it could be a flower towards the middle bottom that I just think are lovely little moments in this work of art. This is James Kirk Merrick. And this one I have never seen before, so I was really excited to find this. This is a watercolor, as you can probably tell just by how loose and how fluid it is. I love the moment of the vine going up the tree on the right-hand side. Those bright yellows and the bright greens, I just think are wonderful. This to me looks like it almost like rained the night before. And instead of these being shadows, they almost seem like reflections on like a watery, puddly ground. I have no information on this painting. So it's all just by looking at it and deciding that it's beautiful, which I think that it is. Something that I think is interesting though, is if we zoom in, he wrote for TO, and then he has his signature and a date. So I looked it up of who in the world is TO, and I'm pretty sure it's Thornton Oakley, who was his teacher and who was a student of Pyle. So I think that this was a work that James Merrick made for his art teacher, Thornton Oakley, whose work we're going to look at a little bit later. Stanley M. Arthurs was a student of Pyle. Go figure. If you had had a bottle of water with you tonight, you almost could have taken a sip and stayed really hydrated with me for this whole talk every time I say a student of Pyle. So the difference with Stanley M. Arthurs is that he traveled around the country a lot more than the others. I feel like a lot of the other students of Pyle stayed more in the Chadds Ford, Delaware type area, but you can see that this is done in Florida. So he did a lot of works down in Florida, and they really reflect that kind of like Florida feel of that bright blue sky, the green grass, the bright color of the roof of these houses, these buildings. I think that this is one of those works of art that you would find like in someone's summer home down in Florida. And if we zoom in, I just love that little moment there of the colors on that one roof of the cottage, and then the colors just splattered against that wall for those shadows. I just think are absolutely lovely. And to finish off this section for shadow, this is John Wharf, who is known for his luminous watercolors. And this is just such a relaxing and pleasant scene. And there's the peaches and the blues on this lovely little cottage. And I just think it's just such a nice little moment to end with for this section. So now we're going to move on to the science of color. So this one kind of just looks like nothing. But if we zoom out, we can see that it belongs to Ernest Lawson's An Old Sawmill. And he was part of a group of artists known as the Eight. And they didn't believe in academic standards. They kind of wanted to develop their own thing. And they ended up following a lot of the teachings of Impressionist and Post-Impressionist. So this is really the study of light and color, and light, how it filters through trees, and light, how it filters on water, and what it looks like on the building. And it really creates just these wonderful moments as it makes its way through these trees. And I really especially like the mill. I think that that mill is just lovely poking out back there. And I'll let you look at that in its entirety without that little rectangle on it, so you can see it in its whole self. N.C. Wyeth, we're going back to another one of his styles. This is when he decided that he was going to do prism paintings. So these are his, he did a few of these, I'm not sure how many exactly, but where he tried to depict refracted light and its effect on form. And many artists at the time were kind of playing with this idea, but something that NC did that a lot of them didn't do is that you can still see objects in NC. So if you look at it closely, there's a little man and there's a boat. So if you look, you can see both of those peeking out in there. When it was exhibited in Wilmington, the local press described the painting as a blare of color running in ordered riot, as it were, with the outline of a sailing vessel discernible amid the sunshine after a few moments of study. So I actually think that this is rather successful for NCYS fine artworks, and I find it to be very beautiful. It's almost like a little stained glass. Another one of his paintings is Island Funeral. This was inspired by the funeral of a Maine fisherman who passed away. And the family, the Wyeth family, was up in Maine at the time. And although they didn't attend the funeral, they just watched boat after boat go to this little island to attend the funeral. And that's kind of what sparked the inspiration for this painting. But what is so fascinating with this work, and why it's so worth it to come and see it in person, are the blues of that water. It is just the most magnificent blues I've ever seen. And regretfully, it just is not done justice by a photograph. But what happened was there was an informal collaboration with the DuPont company, which is a huge company around here. And chemists at the company provided NC Wyeth 2 pigments, which were Manistral Fast Blue B and Manistral Fast Green G, which were these light fast dyes that had just been developed at DuPont. So Island Funeral was Wyeth's chance to use these brilliant blues. And he used them in Island Funeral and had this work exhibited in his first and only artist gallery exhibition in New York's Macbeth Gallery to show off himself as a fine artist. And when we zoom in, we can see the blues a little bit better. Again, seeing them in person, they are just out of this world exquisite. But it's one of those neat things that in 100 years, we don't know what this painting could look like because of these dyes. He was the one to experiment with them so they could hold fast and steady and be great in 100 years, or fall completely apart or change color. We have no idea. So it'll be exciting to see, not that we'll get to see it, but in future generations for them to look back and see if there's any differences with these blues. To go along with the idea of science, we have James Welling's gradient from 2015. So what happened was the Brandywine River Museum of Art commissioned Welling to create these photo-based sculptures, and they were installed in 9 sites around the 200-acre campus of the museum. So what Welling did is he went around the campus and he took photographs of sites that he thought were important to Andrew Wyeth. So he went around, took photographs of these sites. He then took digital samples of the colors in the photographs, placed them in a digital file, and did a process known as gradient mapping. And it created this smooth gradation of color that he then printed out on these metal plates that we displayed around the campus. And what's so neat with them is that they kind of have this reflective sheen to them. So in this one, you can almost see like the clouds and the branches of the trees in it. So if you stand in front of it, you can see yourself reflected in it. You can see nature reflected in it. And if you come at certain times of the year, you can actually see what the inspiration for the colors is. So here you can see those purple of those flowers being the purple that's in the gradient. When they're up at other times of the year, such as like fall or winter, they're almost like this nice snapshot reminder of what is and what could be at the other times of the year. So just really nice moments. Of the 9, we have 2 that we keep up for most of the year, probably about April to October. We keep up this one, which is near the entrance of the museum, and another one that's near the river. Another work that James Welling did was he went around and took photographs that let him really examine the work of Andrew Wyeth in a new and different way. And for these, sometimes he would take work that almost looks similar to Wyeth and other times inspired by Wyeth, but absolutely beautiful photographs. The reason I'm including this one is that this is taken in Andrew Wyeth's studio, and you can see that it's watercolor paper that's been collected, these blocks of watercolor paper, a really dirty eyeglass container, glasses, and then this vampire book by Anne Rice. But what's neat is that the book itself, excuse my terrible Photoshop, used to be red. And Welling did not like the red. He said it was just too jarring and he didn't like it. So in order to harmonize the whole photograph, he changed it to the that more buttercream goldenrod yellow so that it looked better on the watercolor paper. And you can see the difference, even with my bad job of throwing that other one in, of the red would be more jarring than that yellow is. Our next section is color and design. So N.C. Wyeth, who we keep bringing up, as I said, was really known for his illustrations. And this is one of the most famous ones that we have and most popular ones. This is Treasure Island end paper. So this would have been right when you open the Treasure Island book, what held the cover of the book to the pages. And what's so great with this is that it just is so simple with the colors that are chosen. It's all shades of gray and black with some white thrown in there, and then just brilliant gold sky. So we love bringing kids into the room and having them guess as to why it's a gold sky. And a lot of them guess that it's because the pirates are after gold. So the whole book needs to be about gold and this search for that gold sky and the gold gleam that they're going to find. NC Wyeth must have been ahead of his time, because the colors for this year that were chosen are gray and illuminating, which is this great yellow. So I guess he knew that the pandemic colors were going to be those, and that's why he did this. That's what we're going with. Another Jamie Wyeth excellent example of Nureyev is this one, which is the Don Quixote poster. I chose this for just that brilliant yellow. I thought that that was a nice tie into his grandfather's brilliant yellow that he used. But I also love the glimpses of the red, both in the wording and that little moment in the cape, I just think are absolutely exquisite. So this work was done originally in 1977, and then Jamie Wyeth was given a few of the costumes from Nureyev after he had passed away in the 2000s, and that's why it was done again in 2003. He went back and worked on this work again. So Thornton Oakley, who I said we would look at later, we are going to look at now, was a student of Pyle, and he did this work for Scribner's magazine in August 1916. And instantly you're just drawn to the bottom of that work. So I'm going to show that part a little bit bigger for you so you can see it. And it is just so detailed and so exquisite. I love the peacock feathers. And that's like instantly my favorite part of this. But the designs, the details on the elephant and on the clothing, it's just absolutely lovely. And I love how your eye just circles around and around by those little hints of red in the shoes, in the clothing, in the umbrellas, in the little turbans, and the decoration on the little thing that the elephant has on his back. That's those little moments of red that take you all around this work. And those little moments of red are something we're going to look at for the next few paintings that we see. So this is William H. Bradley. Something neat with William H. Bradley is he was mostly self-taught, and he worked in a printer shop when he was very young after his father had passed away, and he needed to help make money for his family. And it was at this print shop that he learned how neat typography was and the graphics that come with printing, and he really used that in his artwork. I saw on one of the sites that I looked at that he was like one of the most well-paid artists of this time. So he did really, really well for himself. He borrowed the stylistic elements from Japanese prints, and you can really see that influence when you look at this work. And he worked in a flat, broad color planes with cropped forms, and the bold graphic colors just grab your attention. So the blues and the red of the letters. But then if you look at the red, it's actually outlined on all those like little tree branches. If you look closely enough, that it's all on those tree branches as well. Then Penfield also does these amazing posters and covers for different magazines. So this is a poster for Harper's New Monthly magazine, and that hint of red that just brings you, again, your eye around. And his is almost like this coloring book style where everything is outlined with these bold black lines and then just colored in with a flat color. So there's no shading, there's no like nuances with the color. It is black, red, green, gray, like everything is what it is. And he became very popular for these flat graphic colors. Horace Pippin is someone who also did more of this flat type of style of artwork. He was a self-taught African-American artist who lost most of the use of his right arm while serving in France during World War I. So in order to do artwork, he had to hold his right arm with his left arm and move it around in order to create his artwork. If you are not familiar with Horace Pippin, there's a book, a children's book called A Splash of Red, which is brilliant for any age. So if you have students and you want to learn more about Pippin, it's called A Splash of Red, and it is perfect for learning about his life. Anyway, so he did these burnt wood panels and oil paintings, and they were a lot of domestic scenes is what he became known for, and among other things. And they reflect this like nostalgia for his childhood. And people really liked that because it was between the two world wars that became really almost like needed at the time. People needed just the nostalgia childhood and not troubled times and peace and things like that. So he is able to emit strong emotion through simple shapes, simple color, but he really has a sophisticated way of doing it. If you look, there's a red triangle that goes from the two shelves and the woman's headdress, and then down to the rug that takes your eye around that part of the painting. That's so the focal point is that family. But then when you look a little bit more, there is an oval white, a white oval that goes around from the bedcloth in the bedroom. You see the sheets, to the rug, to the children, to the woman, to the snow on the windowsill, to the clock, to the lamp, to that little box, back down to the cloth on the bed. And it just takes you in this wonderful motion. This painting is brilliant for talking to kids with. There is so much with it. We did a program this morning for our volunteers and talked about this for maybe 40 minutes with people that have seen it a million times before, because there's just so much to it. But since we're only focusing on color, I will skip ahead, but it is a wonderful one to look at more. Also in this flattened style and self-taught style is Grandma Moses. We're very excited to now own a Grandma Moses painting. This has only been with us for a few years and we absolutely love it. And she did also this nostalgic subject matter. And she did what people perceived as like authentic American art, which is what made her so popular, because she wasn't doing any of the styles of Europe or anything. She didn't know them. So she just did what was true to her and out her backyard. And this is what she did. And people loved it because it was so American. So this one, if we look at the colors, it's just full of every color you can imagine. But I love that the brownish orange takes you all around, and so does the green, which takes you in that whole busy moment of these people sugaring off the maple in the winter. But if we go away from the colorful part of the scene, which is where your eye goes immediately, if you look to the right of the painting is that grove of white trees. It is not the first thing you notice because you're meant to notice all the little people first. But I think that grove of the white trees are just absolutely beautiful. Another new acquisition to the museum is this by Clementine Hunter. She is a self-taught African-American artist who spent most of her life as a field hand and a cook on a cotton plantation. And it was there that she learned to mark a picture, which is her own words for it. So she did scenes of cotton picking, weddings, church goings, dances, and she was also known for these bold flower works that she did. So this one is Zinnia Bouquet, and you can see just how bright and brilliant those yellows are, the reds are, and there's like a little hint of red in each center, which I think is just exquisite. Something that's really sad is that Clementine Hunter was so amazing as an artist that she got an art show in 1950s at some point, which was extraordinary for a woman and a woman of color to get this art show. And she wasn't allowed into the gallery where her own artwork was hung for an art show because of the segregation laws. So everybody else could go in and see her artwork hanging there, and she wasn't even allowed to go see her own artwork. So she's a fascinating person to look up. So if you have not heard of Clementine Hunter, I would add her, especially during Black History Month. She's another excellent one, along with Horace Pippin, to look at in your classroom. So our last painting for this section goes against everything we just talked about for the last like 6 slides, which was about how flat everything is. This is a Trump Lloyd painting by Robert C. Jackson called Target the Artist. This one, truly, when you walk into the gallery, you think there's a balloon animal stuck on the wall. It is absolutely incredibly just detailed and perfect. I adore this work. I remember seeing it when I was little, visiting the museum, and have always just been obsessed with it. So it's called Target the Artist. And if you look closely, that little balloon dog is on a target and he's holding a paintbrush. So this is done about Andrew Wyeth and the fact that critics really did not like Andrew Wyeth. They weren't kind to him. They thought he was just a whatever realist painter and not very exciting. Whereas Andrew Wyeth always considered himself to be more of an abstractionist. So he was always upset by what the critics would say about him, and critics really never gave him his due of what I think he deserved. But I chose this one for this section just for how graphic it is, and that pop of red in the middle that sucks you right in, that red and the white, and then the hints of red all throughout the rest of the background that take you all around. Our last section is the colors of nature. So of course we had to go back to my buddy NC Wyeth, and this was a cover for Westward Ho. And our first part of this, we're going to look at kind of like the unnatural colors of nature. So I've seen many a sunset. I've seen many a pretty sunset, but none of them that looked quite like this. But at the time, and still going today, is it's really important for publishers that you have a good cover that's going to be catching so that people want to buy the book. And that's why they're going to keep hiring you to do the artwork. And NC Wyeth actually wrote a letter to someone just saying how proud he was of this cover of this work, because he knew it was going to sell a lot of copies because of how bright and vibrant it was. To go along with this bright and vibrant, we have Gordon McCouch's Autumn. So he does these like neat geometric cubist, almost surrealist style, but then his colors are very much of like Monet and Cezanne with their sensitivity and their almost like a lyric way of working with color. And it's so autumny. If you were to ask a child what colors are for autumn or for fall, you know, you get brown, yellow, orange, and red. And this truly is a brown, orange, yellow, and red painting. And it truly epitomizes that idea of what we think of when we think of autumn. Along this idea, again, of this bright, vibrant colors, we have Franz A. Bischoff, who took the colors of his California landscape outside of his window and kind of like turned up the volume on all of them. So it's like, yes, it was green. Yes, it was blue. Yes, it had some pinks and browns, but then he like upped it where it's like these vibrant, brilliant versions of all those colors. And we're going to look now at Jamie Wyeth's Frolic. So finally not a Nureyev. I chose somebody else. So this is his Frolic painting. And I just love that lime green in the background that just looks like it's splattered on there. And he did another artwork of his wife that has a similar like lime green and chartreuse and bright yellow background to her as well, that has this splattered effect to it. So it's all this like unnatural look at nature's colors. So yes, the background was probably green, but now it's really green. Elizabeth Osborne, this is one that's we're hoping to be in our collection soon. This is a promised gift of Heather Richards Evan. So hopefully we get this one soon. It is absolutely gorgeous. Elizabeth Osborne kind of had this one foot in the door of abstraction and one foot in the door of realism. And I think you can really see that in this work where like, yes, it is water and the sky and trees and foliage. But at the same time, it's some wavy lines and some splotches and some vertical lines and some horizontal lines. And I think it's neat that it does both of that. And she uses really bold and color-drenched landscapes and really explores color spectrums, which I think you can see in this work as well. To go a little bit more realistic, so we're starting to head towards our more realistic nature colors, we have another new painting by Mary Page Evans, which is peonies in June. So peonies are really popular around our area. We filled a museum with them at different times that they're available during the year that our volunteers are able to cut them for us. And I love that S shape of those darker peonies that take your eye from the back of the work all the way to the front and then back again. Oh, it's just, this work is absolutely exquisite, and it's rather large, which makes it really powerful. Edward Willius Redfield's Garden of the Girls. We're getting more and more realistic. And this one reminds me of the one that we just saw where it's just so happy. Like those peonies were just so happy and so cheerful. This is just such a happy, cheerful scene as well. So he was part of the New Hope School of Pennsylvania Impressionism. And he did a lot of his work in Pennsylvania doing winter scenes is what he became known for. So winter in Pennsylvania, we all live, most of us live in Pennsylvania in the winter. It's not like this. It's not really pretty. So he got really excited when he started to go to New England coast and just loved the lush gardens and the beautiful water scenes there and everything else. So he started to go there for his springs and his summers to get these beautiful, just vibrant, bright paintings that he would do in plein air. So this is done with very quick brush strokes that are done at like almost a frenzied pace. If you stand up next to it, you can almost see how frenzied he was doing this to try to capture the light and the colors on this main day. John W. McCoy married Anne Wyeth, who was the pianist for the Wyeths and a composer. And he was fascinated with light and coloring and the very mood of the landscape. And this one I chose of his because I just loved all those colors of the water. And it brought me back to that work of N.C. Wyeth's funeral painting with all those blues and those greens. And I just thought that this one was a lovely one of McCoy's to show. Martin Johnson Heed did these ephemeral light paintings, and he painted salt marshes, which like no one has ever really seemed to care about, but he did. And it's got this great horizontal line and then just that wonderful sunset. And I know we've all seen these kinds of sunsets where like the clouds turn these unnatural bright pinks and oranges and yellow, and you get out there with your cell phone and they look so drab and dull because your cell phone just can't capture it. So the way that he is able to capture the light in this is, again, just so exquisite when you're in person. Regretfully, not so much in my slide, even with my good image. This one in person just blows you away with the colors of that sunset. John Lafarge, I added him in because his study of color is what he's known for. He did studies of color for stained glass, and he studied French academics and pre-Raphaelite paintings to really understand color. So like color was his thing. He also had a big appreciation for Asian culture. So you can really see that influence in this work with the Asian culture and the color. And I love the little bit of blue at the top of the fountain where the water is first pooling. So Andrew Wyeth, who we've talked about a bunch of times tonight, but haven't looked at any of his work. We're going to finish off our night looking at Andrew Wyeth work. So Andrew Wyeth in the beginning did a lot of watercolors that were very bright and very bold and full of color and done very quickly. And this is his one that he did up in Maine. And it's fluid and expressive, and it's just exuberant with the color. And it really just shows off like that Maine coastline. And then we have this work also by Andrew Wyeth, which is an egg tempera painting. And egg tempera, if you're not familiar, is used as a painting style where you take the yolk of an egg, mix it with distilled water and color pigments to make the paint. And it is very exacting, and you need small, very precise brush strokes to do it, but it creates just these incredibly detailed works of art where you can see everything. If you know the painting, Christina's World by Andrew Wyeth, with the girl on the hill looking up at the house, that's been spoofed a million times over, you can see every blade of grass in that, as you can with this painting as well. So I chose this one for a color presentation because, as those of us that live in Pennsylvania know, this is the color of Pennsylvania. This is it. It is browns. It is the darker greens. It is the duller yellows. I live for fall. Every single year I want fall to look bright and beautiful and gorgeous. And there's always like that one tree in the neighborhood that does, and the rest kind of just looks like this. I still love it. Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania, all these areas are my home, so I adore it. But this truly is the color of a Pennsylvania landscape, so I had to include it. And then this is another watercolor of Andrew Wyeth, but later on in life, this is of his father's studio. It's called North Light because those windows of the studio were made so that all the northern light would come in and be the best light for his father to do his artwork too. And this truly is a study of the color white. It's just all these different shades and nuances of the color white, and then highlighted against the dark forms of the windows and the dark forms of those branches coming through. So not tons of color is what people think of when they think of Andrew Wyeth. I think we can prove them wrong with some of his work, but I think it's more that these truly are the colors of the world that was around him. This is the color of the world if he stepped out during a snowstorm in Chad's Ford. So I think that they're absolutely exquisite. And then this one didn't fit anywhere, but I loved it. So I stuck it as my last one. So this is our last one that we're looking at tonight. This is George Matthews Harding. This is his Wedgwood pictures that I just think are so lovely. I've never seen this hung at the museum, but I just think it is so pretty. And so I added it at the end. So hopefully that gave you some inspiration. I'm going to come out now and we can switch gears to taking the inspiration and everything that we just saw and applying it to doing some artwork. And you can take a breather from hearing me yap about color for a while, which I'm sure we all need. So thank you.
You probably
And
need
I'm
the
going to hand
breather.
over to Laura.
There was one question that I wasn't able to answer in the chat early on in your first section. Someone was wondering where you got your color swatches, because I think they saw some classroom applications for that.
Google search.
Okay.
And nothing fancy. Google image search of like red color, different color. Like I did not search nicely. I can send them. It wasn't anything fancy. Different shades of red. Google image search.
Wonderful. Okay, so yes, I know we all enjoyed that talk by Liesl very much as she sips her water now. We're going to switch over to the hands-on part now for anybody who's going to be doing this along with me. My name is Laura Westmoreland. I'm also an educator at Brandywine with Liesl. I work with the adult and community programs. So I often do these hands-on workshops for adults. So I'm very excited to lead you in something, and maybe we'll find some ways that this would be useful with your students in some kind of way. So I am actually going to switch my camera so that it shows my hands. Unless somebody who's a host would like to spotlight me, everybody else, I would maybe recommend that you put me on speaker view so that you can see what I'm doing up close. And I'm going to do the same. Actually, just so that I can see it larger, there we go. Thank you. So someone has spotlighted me. So here's my hands. I'm still here and I may periodically switch my camera around so you can see me again. But we are going to be doing a project that's inspired by alcohol inks. So alcohol inks is a popular medium right now. It's on the newer side. And we're going to see how we can recreate some of that using Sharpies. So some things that we'll have on hand is I have a big collection of different colored Sharpies. Whatever colors you have on hand, you'll be able to work with. You will probably notice I have gloves on my hands. That's just because when we're working with the rubbing alcohol, it will get the ink in it. It can kind of run around. So gloves will, keep your hands safe from that. It'll also prevent them from getting stained. The recommended materials for tonight was white glossy ceramic tiles. These are very easy to pick up at Lowe's or Home Depot. I think they were only like 15 cents each. So it's an easy medium to obtain and work with. I did notice the last time we bought them, they were white all the way around. These that I got today have this barcode on the side, which I don't love, but it made me think maybe when I'm all finished, I would take something like a black marker and cover that. If you were working with the real deal alcohol inks, you could do it on tiles. Another medium that you can work with is this paper that's called Yupo paper. You can buy that through art supply, stores, websites. That's a plastic non-porous paper. Another thing that you can use is actually, which I have some here, you can buy photo paper that would go in your printer. The trick is, though, that the better side to work on is actually the back, which is it's still very plasticky, but it's less shiny. Most brands that you buy are going to have writing on the back. This brand that is has no writing on the back is from Costco. It's the Kirkland brand that they sell, where you have to buy like 500 sheets at once. But it's a very economical way of working. It's probably comparable to working on a tile, since I was saying this was around 15 cents. Yupo paper, just for comparison, something around this size would be about $1 a sheet. So you can think about that when you're working. I've also heard of people working on something like if you find plastic placemats or something at the dollar store, any kind of plastic that could have white behind it. You do want to work on a white surface, just like watercolor and other types of water media. The color is going to basically appear by like reflecting through the white background. So they wouldn't work so great on something like a sheet of glass unless you put a piece of paper, a piece of white paper behind it, because the white is what's really going to make the color stand out. We're also going to need some rubbing alcohol. So I already have mine in this little cup. If you have a bottle of it, you know, like you would get from the drugstore or wherever, you may for the evening want to put it in a little cup. It might just be easier to get out. When you buy rubbing alcohol, you can usually get it in either 70 or 91%. I don't notice a big difference when I'm working with them as far as how they work with the colors. The difference I notice is that the 91% dries faster. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing. That's the difference that I notice. I have just a couple of paintbrushes with me tonight. If you have like really beloved paintbrushes, maybe don't use those just because rubbing alcohol can dry them out a little bit. So I'm using lower end paintbrushes. I put that as something you definitely should have. Something that I will use tonight, but you can work around it if you have paintbrushes, is I'm going to use a little dropper like this for applying some of my rubbing alcohol to the tile later. This was part of like some kind of body oil that I had that I just kept afterwards, but any kind of dropper would work. If you don't have it, no worries. You could use a paintbrush to put rubbing alcohol on. I think the last important thing is probably a few paper towels would be good. And then we'll talk about some other things that you might use if you make tiles that you really love and want to keep. So my plan, I feel like actually I'm going to switch to my face for just a moment while I'm talking. My plan for the evening is I'm going to show you 3 to 4 different jumping off points for getting started, just some ideas about how you can put color on the tile and then use the alcohol to make some interesting effects. I think it probably will work well for you to work right along with me, not really wait till the end. I may do something where, you know, you're not as interested in trying it, so that's fine. You also can experiment in other ways that I don't, but this will be kind of like a work along together thing. I think we're small enough that you are welcome to unmute and ask questions as we go, and if not, we'll pause a little bit between them. So back to my hands. I'll show an example for each one I do. You're never going to recreate the same exact tile, but it'll give you an idea of where we may end up. So for the first one, we're going to put some color on the tile and then put a good amount of rubbing alcohol on and really let the fluid nature of the alcohol take over and let the colors do their thing. So this will be a very loose one. So I'm going to start with, I think I'll use 3 different colors. In this one, I used a dark blue, a purple, and a light pink that kind of blended together. I think this time I'll do blue, green, and maybe a pink. So you can think a little bit about, you know, what you all know about colors mixing together and some of the things that Liesl shared. If you have colors that are kind of complementary, that could make your tile very interesting and dynamic. You may need to be careful that you don't have too many complementary colors blending together, because you may get some, you know, a brownish kind of color. So I'm just going to be careful with these. Maybe I'll keep the pink and the green. I'll keep the blue in between them so that maybe the pink and the green won't blend too much. So actually, my first step before I jump right in, if your tile, like if it's straight from the hardware store, you might just want to make sure there's no dust on it. If it's looking pretty bad, one thing you could do is take a paper towel dip it in your rubbing alcohol and wipe the tile off. If it's not that bad, you don't need to get your tile wet first. I'm going to dry this off. One thing just to save your Sharpies is you really don't want to draw on a tile that has any wet alcohol on it, because it'll just kind of mess up your marker. And that'll be true as we go along. If anything's wet, you're going to want to wait. Okay, so I've got my clean tile, and now I'm going to take my markers and just start, there's really nothing too precise about this. I'm going to just start coloring in areas. I'm not going to cover every spot of white, but I'm going to cover a pretty good amount. So nothing too fancy. As you do this, like after you make one, you'll also get an idea probably of, you know, how bold or how pale it comes out, and that could inform you a little bit for the next time you do one. Like maybe you want to fill in a greater percentage of the tile or a lesser one. While I'm coloring, one thing that I'll mention is, you know, I was mentioning that this is kind of like a spoof on alcohol inks, and they're really fun. We have found at Brandywine that especially during COVID, it's really wonderful. Anytime you can find something to do using stuff that people may be likely to have at home. We've done a lot of blogs on our website where we've tried to think through ways to use at-home materials. And I'm sure as teachers, if you are teaching virtually, you probably want to come up with some solutions where kids may have things at home. Okay, so I've got my colors on there. One material that I forgot to mention, it was in the write-up that we did, but I didn't mention it today, is I have a straw on hand, and I'm going to be using this when I'm ready to blow on my tile after I get some alcohol on there. It's really easy to use a straw. One thing I will use tonight a little bit, just because it's easier for me to like talk as I'm doing it. This is an old grungy condiment bottle, like a ketchup bottle. I may use this to blow air just because it's easier for me to talk to all of you. But anything you have that could help blow air around will come in handy. So getting to that step, what I'm going to do now is take either my dropper, or if you're doing it with a paintbrush, you may want like a larger paintbrush that can soak up a good amount of liquid. And I'm going to start dripping this over my tile. I'm going to get a pretty good coating on there. And as soon as it goes down, hopefully you can see in the camera, the marker ink, it's getting activated right away. Do you see it blending on there? And you can start to move, it's going to start moving on its own as the ink is spreading. You can help it a little bit by lifting. Do y'all see the ink moving as I do that? And then you can use your straw to control it a little bit more. Like say in this corner, I wanted that blue and green to blend a little bit more. You can blow it right into it. Turn it around. If you have any dry areas that aren't really, you know, moving, you can add a little bit more. I have a few spots on the edge that I'm going to add a little more to. So the only thing you don't want to do at this point is add more marker to it, just because you would mess up your markers. The ink will keep moving as long as it's wet. So don't blow it too much, because if say you get it right now to where you're like, that looks awesome, I love it. If it's still really wet, the colors are going to continue to blend. I'm sure you can all see my green and the blue up here continuing to blend. You could try blowing on it from a distance a little bit to help it dry a little faster if you're getting it where you really like it. I'm going to blow a little more. sometimes in the areas that overlap, you'll get like darks that you didn't expect. So for me, where the green and the pink and the blue are overlapping, I'm getting a kind of cool, like blackish color. Say there's an area where you do wish you had a little bit more white, you can go in, even though it's wet, and add another drop of alcohol. And it may still kind of all blend together, but if you see where I dropped that, that made a new lighter area just because it diffused it a little bit more. I could try blowing directly into it and see if that thins it out too. So you see how I just made that lighter area? All right. So I'm going to let this one dry for a minute. I'm going to see if I have enough space on the table here to leave this where it can dry and you can see it a little bit while I do something else. Actually, I'll go ahead and mention now, because this is a dry one that I'd done before. When they dry, the ink can scratch off of it pretty easily. So if you get one that gets to a dry state, we'll talk in a little bit about how you could seal these and protect these. But in the meantime, just be careful that you don't scratch it with anything. I'm curious if anybody is working along with us and how your colors are blending. Does anybody feel like sharing as we move on to the next idea?
I'm getting like a crackle effect in my Sharpie, which is interesting.
Oh, in only one of the colors or all of them?
The blue.
And is it dry yet or still pretty wet?
It's still pretty wet. But I'm excited to see if it's going to stay that way.
Yeah, that's neat. All right, I'll leave that one on the side. Go ahead.
I had a color that, like, I used red, and the red didn't really seem to move around a lot. Like, it stayed, like, I drew a heart shape, and I kind of wanted to, it just sort of, I don't know, it just doesn't look pretty, like it didn't blend. Is that just some colors, or could it be an older? No, it's a brand new marker. I just bought this one, so it's not an old marker. But
do you have another color on there that blended more than that?
I have orange and I have purple, and they really had a nice flow to them, but the red just didn't really flow. Is that?
I wonder, my first thought was if others didn't, like maybe your tile wouldn't have been as glossy as, some other tiles, and maybe that would prevent it from doing that. Maybe being like totally brand new, it was able to have a staining effect to it. You could try adding more if you wanted to. Oh, I just saw a comment that I want to address. Someone said silver doesn't respond to the alcohol at all. I was going to bring that up in a little bit. And actually, I should have done that earlier. It would be so wonderful if Sharpie metallic markers worked with this technique, because it would be so beautiful. They don't. I've read online that for some reason, the oil-based Sharpies do work with the rubbing alcohol. Doesn't really make sense to me. I've heard that works. There are metallic alcohol inks you can buy. So if it's something that you really want, and you can, find them online, it is possible, but it is a shame. I've tried to. Yeah, the metallic Sharpies just don't work. So, okay, let's.
Laura,
before
we move on, I hated mine, but could erase it because I don't like what it looked like. So if anyone dislikes theirs, you can erase it out.
Yes. So I'll show that on the next tile. This, if you didn't buy too many tiles and you have one that you want to do over, this is very forgiving, especially when we're working on the tiles. Mine that I did here, I think my table is not too even. It all keeps running to one side, so I'm just turning that around a little bit more. So I'll show you that example of cleaning it off. I'm getting tile number 2. This one I'm going to wipe off as well. So yes, Liesl had a great point, and I'll show that before I even get into this next one. If you know, you're drawing on it, and let's see. Oh, that marker's not working so good. And you get your ink on it, and it just doesn't blend right. You don't like the color. Maybe it's making brown. Blow on it. And you think like, why did I just try to blend teal and purple? It's not going to work good. You can, the same way we cleaned them off before, you can take a wet paper towel with the rubbing alcohol on it, and you can wipe it just about down to brand new. It gets certainly close enough that you can go over it. It's possible there'd be like a tiny bit of a stain, but nothing that, as long as you put more ink over it, you're not, that's going to bother you. So that's always fun. There's not too many media that we work in where we can completely start over. Okay, for this next one, this is going to be a little bit more of a controlled technique. And because I know for some of us, if the one where it's like really flowing, if that's just too, not everybody can work that free form, can be a little stressful. This one is going to give us a little, you could do it in different style lines, but this sample gives you a little bit of like an agate stone inspired pattern. So for this one, I would pick 2 to 3 colors. Let's see. I don't want to do exactly what I did last time. Maybe I'll do red, purple, and orange. So for this one, we're going to work one line at a time. And you can take it on your tile, and whatever kind of pattern, like you could do this as concentric circles. I did mine just as like these flowy kind of S lines. I think I'll do that again. It doesn't, you don't need to start all the way on one edge. You could start in the middle if you want, and just get some kind of line going in there. Now, this is one where you really would want your cup of alcohol. You wouldn't want to try to dip into your container. And actually, if you have a cup, for doing this one, you may end up staining your alcohol a little bit. So it wouldn't hurt to work in a cup with like just a tiny little bit, an amount where you wouldn't mind disposing of it when you're done if needed. One of my paintbrushes rolled off. I'm going to try using this flat paintbrush at first. If this seems to put too much alcohol on it, I might skip over to a smaller one. So I'm going to get just a tiny bit of rubbing alcohol on my brush, and starting on one side of the line, I'm going to put the brush down and sort of push it into the line, bringing my brush out just a tiny bit. I'm going to repeat. I'm just kind of like dabbing the edge. If possible, over here, my alcohol went to the left side of the line. If possible, I'm going to try to take it just up to the right side, so it just bleeds out this one direction towards me. But it really doesn't matter. If it goes over the other side, that's fine. So I'm just going up to the line and giving it enough alcohol that it can start bleeding out one way. All right, when one side of it is done, I'm going to flip the tile around and do the same thing on the other side. So that's why it doesn't really matter if you go over the other side. I'm going to start at the top this time because that's where I started before. And this is going to work a little bit better if it's dry. If I go into an area that's still really wet, it may just all bleed a little more than I'm wanting it to. So I'm going in with my brush and just kind of softening this side of it. putting a little bit on there. One thing that is really neat to me about both alcohol inks and Sharpies is as the colors dilute, sometimes they look a little different than the original color. So I think you can even sort of see it on the camera. The line, while it looked pretty red, the diluted part is looking kind of orange. And I think that's just because of the, you know, pigments and chemicals used to create it. Some of the things look different when they're more potent and when they're diluted a little bit. Okay, so that line is drying. I'm going to flip it around again because I want to try to work on the dry side. Remember what I said about how you will really mess up your marker if you run it through wet alcohol. So I'm going to just do another line pretty close to this one. You can choose how close or far apart you want them. This time I think I'm going to try my smaller brush. So same thing. I'm going to just push a little alcohol into this side of it. And I'm not really using my brush too much to like pull the ink out. Just as long as I put the alcohol on the edge of it, it'll activate the ink and it'll bleed out into the wet area on its own, which is kind of similar to watercolor. Watercolor will do that too, if you've worked in that. One thing I like about doing something like this is, to me, it feels like less of a commitment. Like you can work on a little bit of the tile, leave it for a while, come back, versus, you know, where we put all that alcohol on the first tile. Now this first line I did, these areas that look bright, those are still wet. So I'm going to see what those look like as they dry. If they stay as bold as they look now, I would potentially go in with a little bit more alcohol to break them up, but I'm going to let them dry all the way first to see. All right, so once again, spinning the tile so that I'm working in a dry area. What other color did I say I was going to use? Blue, I think. Or was it green? As I do another line or two, is anybody trying this one and having any luck or non-luck? Not yet.
I just drew the line, so I don't know yet.
I've noticed on my first one, as it's drying, it kind of changes a little bit of color. It kind of, the texture's changing a little bit. Is that?
I'm noticing that on mine too. And I don't know that you'll find something totally consistent with that, but on mine, so mine's an example here where it thinned out because mine was all running to that side. Like, I think it's kind of cool. You got these little lines as it would dry and then it would recede and dry. So you get these wispy lines. I'm thinking over in this side, when it dries, it's going to be more solid, because actually this area right here with that bright blue, that's pretty solid. Like that, I don't think that's going to get the little, I don't even know what you would call it, those flowy lines that we have around the side. But yes, I do agree that it changes as it dries a bit. And I'm definitely seeing that with my orange line that I did here. Some areas look a little red, some look a little orange. It's definitely a medium that requires being open to the possibilities, the unexpected possibilities. And you can't recreate the same piece twice.
So what do you do if you don't like the way a tile is drying?
The way it's drying, well, you do have the possibility of just wiping it off, like we talked about a minute ago. So this one, so if you're talking about something like this, really the only thing you could probably do at this point, and I'm happy to try it on mine, you can always throw a little bit more rubbing alcohol in there and start blowing things around. It's definitely not going to give you like more precise colors. If anything, it's going to, you know, blend the colors even more. You could, if you have enough white showing, so like for me, I could possibly do it over here. You could draw in a little bit more color and add it and add more ink again. Like if I wanted to get some pink into that white area, I probably could. But like I wouldn't, for instance, add pink over here where I already have green and blue drying, just because I know that's not going to work very well.
Gotcha.
Does that answer that a little bit?
Yeah, just wanted to do some creative problem solving.
Yeah, here, and I'll do this. So over in this corner where mine's still pretty light and it's mostly just blue. I know you probably can't see so well with the camera, but I have green here, but the green didn't quite make it to the outer rim. So I'm adding a little more pink on this side. And I'll add some more alcohol and let that blend.
Oh, wow, that's pretty.
Yeah, so that did bring it up a little bit.
How long does this take to dry, fully dry? If you're using like 91%?
So it's going to depend on the temperature and the humidity where you are. But just for example, this one that I first did, like I know I just added alcohol in these two corners. Mine is all the way dry except a little bit here of the original stuff. So, you know, maybe that was 10 minutes. Now the one I'm doing now here, these are totally dry because I'm not using near as much alcohol. So since I think some of you are trying this, I'll do another line or two on this, and then we'll move on to another idea.
Just wondering, do you find that like darker color Sharpies or like lighter color Sharpies have like a differences? Because at least like I feel like I'm not having as much success with like the like lighter color Sharpies. Like the alcohol just kind of just like obliterates the color, doesn't really like spread too much.
I would agree with that. Let's see. In this first example, the dry one that I showed, I did have like a light pink. And I mean, if you look for it, you can see it in there. But once it's diluted, so you're taking an already light color and then diluting it with alcohol. So you are going to get something very pastel with that. So I think, you know, depending on what you're going for, you may just prefer using the bolder Sharpies.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So a key difference that I would say that exists between this and Sharpies and working in alcohol inks is in alcohol inks, the process can be a little bit opposite, like where you put the rubbing alcohol on first and then add the ink. So it flows in. It's sort of like if you were doing watercolor and you coated your whole paper with water and then put your paint on where it would diffuse into it. You can do some of that. So obviously this is a little bit different. It's like a reverse process where you have to put the ink on first and then put the ink and then, then put the alcohol on. But it does have a very similar outcome. So one thing, now that I have a few lines on mine that I'm going to point out to you, I think one of my favorite things about really both this and alcohol inks is, I know as art teachers, I'm sure you're always talking about contrast and, your darks and lights to make your composition more interesting. So when you have your ink on your tile, need a pointer here. So say you had your line of purple. When you put the alcohol, just on one side of that line, we talked about how it takes the purple or the color and it diffuses it. So, it makes it lighter as you get farther away from the line. But what it also does is, alcohol, when you put the drop on, it's wherever that drop is, it's always moving outward from that. So it's also moving into your line, like pushing the ink more into the line, if that makes sense. So what you end up getting is a very dark, as long as there's not too much ink on where the whole thing diffuses, you can get this very dark center line where it's like the ink or the alcohol from both sides overlapped. So I just think that can be very interesting where you have a dark, dark center and then it fades out into different tints of the color. Go back to my first one here. Yeah, the purple thing that happened over there when I added the pink and it all blended, it's kind of interesting, but that can be similar. So, and actually the corner is a good example. It's a very light purple and blue where the alcohol really diluted it. As it gets into a thicker area, I have like some nice bold purple here, and where it overlaps in a line, I have some real darks. So to me, that can make a successful tile or a successful piece, where you have a blend of bold, vibrant colors along with some nice darks and real light areas. So, all right, I know some of you are working, but I think maybe the best use of time would be for me to continue to just show a couple other ideas for inspiration. You can do them right along with me and come back to any techniques you're working on now, or you could try at a later time. I'm going to get this guy out of the way. I'll move both these now. So this one here, it's really not that different. But to me, in my mind, this is sort of a combination of both of the techniques that we've done already. So let's see, I'm going to pick 3 colors again. I'll do these this time. And I'm not going to color the whole tile, like that first one I did where I covered almost all of it. I'm just going to put some areas of color on it. Going to evenly divide these 3 colors up. Don't you love this? My my beautiful composition here. So the difference this time is instead of taking my alcohol and just covering the whole thing and allowing it to, you know, blend and do whatever it wants, I'm going to be a little bit more controlled about it this time. So I'm going to wet just like a small area. So I did 3 drops right here. And I'm going to, using either my straw or for me using my bottle so that I can talk to you all at the same time, I'm going to just kind of wisp them out into it as far as I want, like not trying to cover a significant part of the tile all at once. So as those 2 blend there, I'm going to turn and just work in a dry area. So this is going to be a back and forth between working in wet and dry. One little thing that can help is when you get your alcohol on there, so I have a little drop of alcohol on the side of that blue, you can use your air, again, using either your straw or your bottle. And you can, you probably can't see because the glare just isn't working in my favor right now. But you can spread that alcohol out. So right now mine's like about this area. And then you can start to blow the ink into it. So it's a lot like that first technique of where you're letting the colors flow into the alcohol, but it's just a lot more controlled because you're working in a small area at once. And my end goal is going to have more white be part of the composition than completely covering the whole tile. You can do some similar things on Yupo paper when you're working with alcohol inks, but it does behave a little bit differently. It dries a little more quickly on that. So this has a little bit more of a blending, free flow kind of look to it. So I'm sure you can imagine you could definitely use projects like this, either as, I mean, if it was something you could do with students, you could include them, or even just a demonstration of, you know, how different colors blend, you know, making secondary and tertiary colors. You know what, I should have used it in example. Someone early was saying that they would be using a black marker. And I do kind of like how the Sharpie black marker looks, because when it dilutes, it gets a little bit of a blue or purple shade to it. So it can give a real like foggy, smoky kind of look. Is anybody using black and curious how it's working for you?
I'm using black.
Mm-hmm. How's it working?
It's looking a little purple, which is pretty.
Yeah.
I'm curious, is anyone else using red and not having good luck with it?
I'm using red and it just turned like really bright orange.
Oh, and someone else just in the chat just said their red isn't working.
Okay.
I have a red. You know what? Again, I'm here to be the test one for you all. Let me try mine. I do believe mine was working fine earlier, but I think that's 2 people then who said they were having trouble with it.
I
I've noticed that some of the colors, not just red, although red is one, get like kind of flaky. It's like the alcohol is getting under the pigment and it's lifting it up and making it like little chips of pigment in there instead of dissolving. Not with every color, but a couple.
Yeah, I see that sometimes. I usually feel like they do dissolve in the end. So this is my red. I agree with whoever said it looks more orange, you know, than I actually, even when pretty sure I'm not using orange because here's orange. This one in the camera looks orange, but it is red. So mine's definitely dissolving fine, but it does take on like a very bright kind of fluorescent, almost orange look. So again, I mean, I would just say we are using these materials kind of not in the way they're intended to be, you know, not the way they're not created to be used. So it is possible that, you know, whatever standards they need to pass to go on the shelves as markers, you know, could be different than what makes them useful for this type of activity. But by and large, you know, if you have an assortment of Sharpie markers, you should be able to have pretty good luck with them if you're putting rubbing alcohol on them on a non-porous surface. But those are interesting things to notice. I've found just even using alcohol inks, different colors will behave differently. And I have had some that do, I think what you're describing with the crackly kind of thing where you just, yeah, they first break apart in the alcohol before they fully dissolve. Does anyone have a favorite thing they've tried so far?
I let my son step in for a little bit and he just used only blue because he tried to do an Israeli flag. But it came out cool with just blue. Nice. I mean, he gave up and walked away. And as he walked away, I liked the way it was drying. It was kind of cool.
Yeah, the piece is definitely not finished until it's dry. Because things can keep changing as long as the alcohol is wet. And you can try like gently fanning it with something to speed the drying process without necessarily moving the ink around. But in the end, it's, yeah, it's up to the ink.
I did some concentric circles that are turning out pretty cool.
Oh, are they dry enough that you'd be able to hold them up to the camera?
No.
No. When they are, you should show us.
Okay. Oh yeah, we'll have to do a little bit of a show and tell a couple minutes before the end if anybody wants to hold it up. Linda and I usually like to grab a screenshot.
Yeah, if you're willing to. So I'm glad you're all working because, you know, mine's coming along slowly, but hopefully you can start to get the idea that over time, this would, my goal in the end would be to get alcohol and diffuse any area where the ink had been directly on the tile. And then hopefully I would have something, you know, similar to this one I made over here, where there is a lot of white. So to me, it's like a light, kind of bright composition. Because it's not too dark. There's plenty of areas for the color to, you know, appear in its full strength over the white. But everything would be blended, no hard edges, very soft. But again, with some neat areas where the colors overlap to give some darkness. To me, I really like that. So since this one I could work on for a while, I think, you know, as we're wrapping up, I will keep working on it, but I'm going to show you, just for sake of inspiration, two other things. I won't try to recreate these. So this here, I was kind of going for like a Rothko look. I didn't get Rothko, it got more like beach. But this, what I did here was I colored over the whole tile. So it was more similar to that first example that I did, colored the whole thing. And then all I did was put drops of alcohol, but without soaking the whole thing. So if you can see all of those circles on there, that's just where some alcohol went on and it sat. So I didn't bring my straw in, I didn't blow it around, I didn't tilt it, try to move it. I actually tried to keep it very still so that it would just break up the color. My hope was that the blue would blend in. I actually had a blue, a light orange, and an orange, and I wanted them to just fade into each other a little bit. So the blue did, you can see that it went into there, but I kind of like that texture that it gave it. So that's where I'm putting alcohol on top, but not trying to move it around. And I think I probably applied the alcohol with a paintbrush so that the drop wouldn't be quite as big as if I did it with my dropper. So there's that. And then I'm glad you said that I think you said your son came in, because I thought this was worth showing. I have a 9-year-old daughter, so she likes playing, you know, with whatever I'm doing. So this was one, if you ignore the unicorn for just a minute, the background is pretty light. She'd been putting some ink on it, didn't really love it. So she wiped it off, but didn't really get in there with a ton of alcohol to make it totally clean. So it gave it this actually really nice kind of brushed, light, faint color in the background. So it wasn't, to her, it wasn't interesting enough to like stand on its own, but it was great as a background. And then this was totally her idea. She, on another piece of paper, drew a unicorn and then decided to cut it out, trace it onto here, and then color it in black. So that was her choice of how to handle something that she thought was a good background. I thought that was kind of fun for her.
Did she glue the unicorn on? Or did she, I'm sorry, how did she do the unicorn again? She
drew on a piece of paper to get her shape right, cut it out, and then she traced it using I think a thin black marker onto here, and then colored this in with a black Sharpie. So we can't put alcohol on this because that would all dissolve. So she drew that and, you know, didn't use any alcohol. But that brings me to another thing that I just want to mention for tonight is sealing these. So, you know, it's fun to work on tiles, but there's only so much you can really do with a finished tile. It's a little bit hard to frame. So these will scratch off very, very easily. You couldn't use them as coasters or anything like this. For sealing them, there are sprays that you can buy. And actually, if we're sending some information, Linda, you had asked that we might send something. I could even put suggested brands in there. There's one made by Krylon called Kmar Varnish. That works really well because it doesn't interact with the inks. There's some other, like if you just got like a glossy spray and you put it on, there's a chance that it could reactivate the alcohol. So it might get a little blurry. But this one by Krylon Kmar, you can spray it and it protects it. My favorite though is a 2-part resin sealer. And that's just totally like if you want to get into that. This is the brand that we've used at the museum, Envirotex. And it really is pretty simple. It comes with 2 different bottles in it. So you just mix them evenly and then pour it over the top. And that gives it that really like glass-like thick seal on the top that would make it really good for something like a coaster. You'll never scratch the ink off.
Can you show that one more time?
Yep. And I can put it in the chat too if you want. So there's different brands of resin that you can get. This is just the one that I've tried and I do like it. I don't feel like it gives off fumes or anything. Envirotex Light High Gloss Finish resin.
Thank you.
Yep. And then the final thing, you know, if we're talking about making them into coasters, the bottoms of tiles, they can be kind of rough because, you know, they're not designed to be coasters. So we've done a couple different things at the museum. We've bought sheets of cork that we've put on the back. Where do I have it? Sorry, my workspace got a little messy. Well, oh, here it is. Where we really lucked out, it was on Amazon. We found these cork backs that have an adhesive. So that made it a lot easier than cutting them and gluing them on. But you could also use something like felt that you could glue on, maybe even some sticky back felt. But with these that we bought, you would just peel it off, put them on, and then it wouldn't mess up your table when you put it on there. So those are the ways that we finish these. With our last few minutes, does anybody have questions, or are you ready to try to go to a screenshot? Part, Linda? I can work on this as long as you want.
Yeah, if people are ready, we can just go back onto a gallery view.
Okay. So then I think you'll want to, oh, I can remove my spotlight. I think I just did.
Yeah,
And
if everyone just goes into gallery, it would also work.
oh, and me. Oh, I like those hexagon tiles.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. I gotta get my gloves off and then I take a picture. Everyone can hang it.
This was like mesmerizing. I don't know if anybody else felt that way.
Oh,
We good?
oh, I love these.
Just keep them up there, trying to do this. Hopefully that worked. I was trying to hold one up at the same time. No, that's not too bad. Okay.
Oh, wow. Natalie, yours blended so nice.
That's my son's that he walked away from and he didn't like it.
Oh, that's pretty.
He said,
Yeah,
I give
that's
up, and he
great.
walked away.
How nice. I'm sorry that I don't know your first name, but the one that says C. McKeska,
Yes,
yours
Cindy.
looked like really light colors. Were you using lighter Sharpies?
I used like a fuchsia and a turquoise. And I just like the marbled kind of look.
Yeah.
I
that was-
tried doing like a geode one. It's
Mhm.
not dry, but I need to wipe it off anyway. I tried to do like geode,
Mhm.
but I have to do it again. It's not working right. And the first one, I destroyed it twice.
Oh.
I have to try that with the drops and then blowing it around.
Well, so much is up to chance with that one that it's, yeah, I mean, trying it a few times, wiping it and trying again it's
Yeah.
no problem.
This is really neat
You can
though.
only control
Yeah,
it so
I
much.
kept getting a lot of hard edges though, like on this one.
Oh.
For some reason.
Mhm.
I like the other one you showed. It looked like the beach with the blues and the
This
yellows.
one.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, that's pretty.
That's beautiful.
Something I did, if you don't have an eyedropper, I just used my straw and I put the straw in the alcohol and then I held it and then I let it go. I don't know if you guys have students that have the fine motor ability to do that, but that worked pretty well.
That's
Or
great.
if you have children that can now take medicine off a spoon or pills.
That's what I have.
This is
Little
someone else.
dropper that I got from the pharmacy when they were little. I found it in the cupboard.
I use a syringe.
Ah, there you go.
Nice.
Mm.
Very creative. And, you know, just like you're coming up with it, there's tons of different household things you could use. You could, if you want to get little areas, like little circles or little white circles by putting alcohol ink, or I'm sorry, getting all my words mixed up, by putting rubbing alcohol on it, you can do that with something like a toothpick or a Q-tip,
Ooh, a
anything you can
toothpick.
do, you know, to get the alcohol on it in various quantities. We'll all do different things.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Would you advise, because I know if I try to do this with my students, they're all going to try to draw a thing. Would you advise against them trying to like have a subject matter? Because my first one, I tried to do swirls and it just looked terrible.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, I would definitely not try to draw a thing at all. If you knew that was very important to them, then I would make the project like creating a background, like the one that I showed you that my daughter did, and then, you know, either do something with a word across it or another image. I mean, these would even make cool, depending on what you're doing, like these would make cool backgrounds, I think, to take photos of and then use it as like a digital background for something, because you're going to get a look that you can't really create in any other media.
I've done these in the past with dominoes.
Oh my gosh.
So this is like the back of the, I've put magnets on them. So this one's just the alcohol ink, but
Mhm.
then these two were the alcohol ink. And they also had a rubber stamper that I used with metallic pigment ink
Ooh.
stampers, and we stamped on top. And
I love
I
that.
did have that reaction problem when I tried to seal them with a spray. It
Mhm.
reactivated some of the alcohol, but most of them still turned out pretty
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, we found that too when we learned that the hard way a little bit at the museum. But I will say the two-part resin, which I don't know if you want to get into that because that is a big ordeal. It does not react with them, and it gives it the most gorgeous finish.
I think that's hard to do with kids though, that resin stuff.
Yeah, it would probably be you doing it on your own.
I have an enrichment class on Thursdays, and there's only like 6 or 7 kids, so this is something I'm going to do with them, and then I'll do the resin afterwards. So they can take it home.
I did that resin with candy, and then with my daughter years and years and years ago, we put candy in it and then put it like across barrettes and pinbacks to sell at like her school store. And nobody had ever seen that resin before because she's 30, how old is she? 37. And this was when she was in 4th grade. So that's how long ago.
That's so cool. That's neat.
Project.
Well, I really appreciate you all spending the time with us tonight. I know Liesl does too.
Well, thank you. This was wonderful. We really appreciate it. And the view through the paintings earlier was great as well. So just a nice
thank you.
evening. So thank you for sharing all that wealth of information with us.
Absolutely. And we'll make sure to send along any more information like about how to seal these and that Splash of Red book I'll send along in an email too. That is just an absolute great book for learning about Horace Pippin. And this is the month to do it. Although we talk about Horace Pippin year round, because I think that African-American artists and people of color should be talked about year round, not just in February. But if you do have it in your curriculum to do it in February, Pippin and Clementine Hunter are great ones to add to your curriculum.
I ordered that book already.
Awesome. It's
Great.
so good.
And Leah and I will share out any materials that we get from the museum with everybody.
Okay, thanks. So I have
Thank
first
you.
through 4th grade. Are they too little for that book?
We have done it with our read aloud group, which is like 2 to 5-year-olds.
Okay.
All the way up through like middle school and high school. It's one of those books that you can like make as hard or as easy as you want, depending on how you just read it and what you talk about.
Perfect.
So you can really do it with like any age, and having them imitate how he would have had to draw with holding his elbow with his other hand is a really great lesson. It's absolutely incredible, the artwork that he was able to do with holding his arm in that manner.
I really appreciate all of this. This is my first year teaching art. I'm a lot older, but it took me a while. I waited many years to wait for that art teacher to retire. So I finally got it, and everybody's super happy with me right now. So that would be cool to add on.
Oh, awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Enjoy. But thank you all for joining us as well. Leah and I appreciate the support, and we are working on some more programs for the rest of the year. So keep an eye out.
Thank you.
This was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
I'm still working.
Stop. You can, Leah. You can.
I can't stop. It's so fun.
Some of us had to work all day, so we're tired. Others got to be lazy.
I was not lazy, my dear.
No, not at all. You probably worked the whole day doing projects.
I did.
All right, I'm gonna head out. Thank you all so much.
Yeah,
Thank you
This was
again.
great.
Bye.
All right, I'll talk to you, Linda.
Sounds good, Leah.
Night.
Bye.